I think for so many of us, especially like people pleasers and yes girls, we're taught that boundaries keep things and people and opportunities out of our lives. But what I've learned time and time again is that boundaries keep us in our lives and what matters the most. I'm Jenna Kutcher, your host of the Goal Digger podcast. I escaped the corporate world at the age of 23 with nothing more than a $300 camera from Craigslist and a dream. Now I'm running a 7-figure online business that feels even better than it looks, all from my house in small town Minnesota with my family. Here, we value time as our currency. We mix the woo and the work, and we are in the pursuit of building businesses that give us the freedom to live lives that we love. I've always loved turning big goals into reality, and I'm here to help you do the same. This isn't just a peek behind the curtain. Come along with me and my guests as we tear the whole curtain down. Every week, we tackle practical, no-fluff marketing strategies and host honest discussions on what works and what doesn't. Join me and my expert guests for actionable insights to help you grow your dream business with confidence. Pull up a seat and get ready to be challenged, inspired, and empowered. This is the Goal Digger Podcast. When I think about the incredible people in the Goal Digger community, I am constantly blown away by the way that you're showing up for your dreams while navigating the real, beautiful, messy realities of life. Today's guest, Samantha Gaunt, embodies that perfectly. She's a blended mom of 5, a creative entrepreneur, and the founder of Simply Scaling, a business that helps mompreneurs streamline their businesses and align their passions with their monthly cycles for a strategic edge. Like, how amazing is that? Sam reached out to me in the Goal Digger Podcast Insiders Facebook group with a challenge I know so many of us face. How do we prioritize intentional growth while protecting our energy? With so many opportunities calling your name, how do you decide where to focus? How do you shift from doing it all to doing what matters most without losing yourself in the process? In today's coaching session, we explore Sam's journey as a multi-passionate mompreneur and unpack the importance of saying no to good opportunities to say yes to the great ones. We dive into how to identify what truly moves the needle in your business, align your work to your personal values, and create boundaries that honor your energy. We also ask some tough questions in terms of success and what it really looks like in this stage and season of life, and talk about some of the harder things women entrepreneurs face, often in isolation. Needless to say, you're going to feel a lot less alone after listening to this one. So whether you're a mompreneur, a multi-passionate creative, or just someone trying to balance ambition with peace, this episode is packed with insights that you can start applying today. Let's dive on in and map out a plan for Sam, and maybe even one for you too. I am so excited to welcome the incredible Sam today to the Goal Digger Podcast. Welcome to the podcast, Sam.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Okay. So we're going to do a coaching episode today, and you've prepared some awesome questions for me. And so before we dive into the coaching portion, just tell us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and where you're at in your business. And then we can dive into the questions you've prepared.
Sure. So I'm Sam. I am a mom of 5 and a virtual assistant, currently aspiring coach. I have worked with many women entrepreneurs in their businesses and getting the strategies to streamline them and run them efficiently so that they can have more time for themselves and their families. And kind of along the way, I noticed that sometimes me personally and my women clients would hit these walls, right? And so sometimes they would just fall off the face of the earth. They would not respond to my, inquiries and things like that. And then other times they would be to the moon with ideas and creativity, and we're going to go with this. And so I kind of started to collect all of this information through my VA work and realized that a lot of this can be just cycle synced, basically. So a lot of this can be just wrapped up into our cycles, our menstrual cycles. So our energy levels just ebb and flow throughout the month. And so I realized that being able to sync our cycles to our business tasks was going to be the game changer. And so I started to do a lot of deep dive research in my own life and planning accordingly. And then I have moved to helping my women business owners to do the same.
Oh my gosh. Okay. I love this. We've done a few different episodes about this on the podcast. I think it is such a powerful tool. And I also think it's very empowering as a woman to kind of shift the way that we look at our cycles and just the way that our energy ebbs and flows throughout the month. So I just think what you do is so amazing. And I also think it is very needed. So let's dive on in to some of the questions you have. And as always, I always say this, but as we're going through these responses, I want you to put everything through the Sam lens in terms of what resonates, what feels aligned. I'm going to do my best to give you some great answers, but I also just want to preface this in saying you have to put everything through what makes most sense for you. So hit me with your first question, and then we'll kind of go from there.
Yeah. So my first question is, as a multi-passionate entrepreneur myself, I often find myself pulled toward several exciting opportunities at once. And so my question to you is, how do you intentionally decide which pocket of your business or your life to go deep with, especially when they all feel equally important or aligned with your goals?
Yes. Okay. So I feel like so many people in my community, we are having zero shortage on ideas, right? Like we are idea generators. We get really excited about new ideas. I'm sure everybody listening has somebody in their life who's like just an idea generator. They're on to the next thing. They're excited about the next thing. You literally can't keep up. And I feel like that is something that is a superpower for a lot of us, but it can also be a huge frustration in figuring out, one, how do I prioritize things? But two, how do I follow through? Because a lot of times idea generators are really good at the initial idea, but they struggle with the follow through. Would you put yourself in that camp?
Definitely.
Okay. I think that's so normal. I think so many of us. And so one of the things that I try to do is when everything feels important or exciting to me, I try to filter my decisions through two main buckets. And the main buckets are impact and alignment. And so I want to figure out first, what is going to move the needle the most right now? Like what is actually going to get me a return or give me results? And then two, what feels most aligned with my core values or what I'm saying is most important? And so I feel like impact and alignment are two really great buckets, especially for more intuitive women. And I feel like knowing the work that you're doing and just how you're kind of understanding women and our bodies and our flows, I feel like these two buckets are going to be really impactful for you because you get to see, okay, what is actually going to move me forward and get me results, but also like what is most aligned with what I say matters and what I'm going after. And so I feel like when we get so many ideas, we have to pick either the one that we're going to get the fastest results on. And so for some people, if you are good at generating the ideas, but you struggle with actually taking any sort of action on them, I always say pick the thing that is like the lowest hanging fruit, like the easiest win that you could get so that you see yourself as somebody who can actually follow through and you can build that consistency muscle that is only built through doing the reps. Or you want to pick the thing that you know is going to be most sustained in terms of your passion. And so something where you're like, I know without a shadow of a doubt, a year from now, I'm still going to care about this thing. It matters that much to me. And so I feel like when we have so many ideas, it's amazing, but it can also be really paralyzing. And so looking at impact and alignment, and then looking at, do I want a quick win or do I want more of a sustained effort? That helps me kind of figure out where to go. But one thing that I've gotten really good at in my business is doing one thing really well and then systemizing and automating and figuring out like how to make this the easiest lift possible before I add on another thing. And knowing what your skill set is and seeing how you are big on systems and streamlining and helping people do that, I feel like you can probably do the same things that you're doing in your clients' lives in your own life and in your own business. Does that resonate?
Oh yeah, for sure. It's always easier for someone else than to do it in my own.
Oh, totally. I mean, even things as like organizing your bathroom drawer. Like if you're doing it yourself, you have those emotional connections or you remember how much you spent on that one concealer or whatever it is. And it's so funny because it's so much easier to go into someone else's bathroom drawer and be like, this is junk or this is gone or throw this away or you don't use this, right? And so I agree that maybe sometimes we need to like hold the mirror up to ourselves and be like, okay, what would I do if I were consulting myself in this business? And I bet that you'll start to kind of uncover places that you can either systemize or streamline your processes to give you more time to work on the ideas.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
Minnesota winters are not my skin's best friend. The freezing wind outside, the Sahara level dryness indoors will make anyone's skin cry for help. But I found a little miracle in a jar. It's called Osea's Undaria Algae Body Butter. Now, honestly, this body butter has become such a small but meaningful part of my self-care routine. After my shower, I take an extra minute to rub it in. I breathe in that fresh citrusy scent. It's like grapefruit and lime, but it also has this cozy feel to it. It has this hint of cypress and mandarin. I seriously wish you could smell it through the airwaves. Osea's Undaria Algae Body Butter is next level. It is thick, it's luxurious, and it absorbs so fast. Plus, it is not greasy at all, which is huge for me because I absolutely hate feeling sticky. My skin feels so soft and hydrated afterward, and I love that it's made with ingredients usually reserved for your face, like Undaria seaweed and ceramides. Treat yourself to clean, clinically tested skincare from Osea. And right now we have a special discount code just for our listeners. Get 10% off your first order site-wide using the code GOLDDIGGER at OseaMalibu.com. That's OSEA Malibu.com. Use the code GOLDDIGGER. It is so easy to lose track of subscriptions. Like, we've all been there, signing up for free trials or services we barely use anymore, and then months later, realizing how much money is quietly slipping through the cracks. Those forgotten subscriptions add up fast, and that's where Rocket Money comes in to save the day. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that makes it incredibly easy to find and cancel subscriptions you don't need anymore, so you're not paying for things you've long forgotten about. But that's just the start. Rocket Money also monitors your spending, helps lower your bills, and puts your savings on autopilot so you can focus on what matters most. Their dashboard is basically like a command center for your finances. You can see all your accounts in one place, set budgets, track spending trends, and even get alerts if a bill goes up. Plus, their new goals feature automatically sets aside money for things like paying off debt, saving up for a big purchase, or building your emergency fund. It's like having a financial assistant right in your pocket. With over 5 million users, Rocket Money has saved people a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions alone, and members can save up to $740 a year using all the premium features. If getting your finances in order is a priority this year, start with Rocket Money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Head to rocketmoney.com/goaldigger today. That's rocketmoney.com/goaldigger. rocketmoney.com/goaldigger. Okay, what's your next question?
So one of the things that I hear from my clients, and once again, I feel myself, is the pressure to do it all or be everything to everyone, especially as a wife and a mom. So how do you personally set your boundaries and let go of the guilt while still showing up as a leader, a wife, mom, and for yourself?
Okay, I love this question so much, Sam, and I feel like I have had to get so clear on what my boundaries are and get very confident at enforcing them. And I'll never forget, my therapist said that boundaries are what protect what's sacred to you. And I feel like when she positioned it in that way of really thinking about like, what is in my inner circle, what matters the most, and how do I kind of build the walls around those things that just protect what is most sacred, it kind of shifted the idea. And I said this in my book, but I think for so many of us, especially like people pleasers and yes girls, we're taught that boundaries keep things and people and opportunities out of our lives. But what I've learned time and time again is that boundaries keep us in our lives and what matters the most. And so for me, I often think of boundaries almost like the bumpers. I mean, you're a mom, you have kids. I think of like when you go bowling and you put the bumpers up so that the ball stays going down the lane and it actually hits the pins down. Boundaries are like the bumpers in my life that keep me in alignment. And so for me, I've had to think of where do I need bumpers in terms of where am I prone to overcommit or say yes when it should be a no. And so an example of this would be like, oftentimes I'll get emails inviting me to like amazing events, right? Like I am so lucky to get invited to go places. I don't like going places. I love being home. And so when I'm in my inbox and somebody's inviting me, to go to the mountains of Colorado, of course I'm like, oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. But when it comes down to it, getting on the airplane, doing the layover, being away from my family, all these different things, I end up hating it. And so I've had to really pay attention to like, what felt aligned but ended up not being in alignment? And then how do I create bumpers around those things? And so I have literally had to sit down and create like templated responses that help me kindly and with grace turn down amazing opportunities and projects and invitations. And so that has helped me so much, because if I were left to my own devices, I would say yes to everything and everyone, because I want to make people happy, right? I want to make people feel loved. And so learning how to put up the bumpers in my life of where I'm prone to overcommit has been huge. And then second, learning how to communicate it in a way that lets people know this is not a reflection of you, your business, your opportunity, your project, anything like that. This is only a reflection of me and what matters most to me. And so changing the language, instead of just saying like, no, I can't come to your party, but like, hey, I told my kids that I'm going to be with them on Saturday. And if I say yes to this, then I'm out of alignment with what I said to my kids. That helps somebody be let down easy and recognize and not let them go on that emotional roller coaster of like, is she mad at me? Does she not like me? What happened here? And so I feel like the communication of the boundaries is the biggest key of being able to enforce them, but also being able to be respected with them. And one thing that I found is that every time I share those types of boundaries, people are inspired to renegotiate what their boundaries are or rethink about what their own. So here's a quick example, but one of my good friends recently had a book launch event and she really wanted me to come speak at it. And I was like, girl, I'm not getting on an airplane. I love you so much. I'm so excited for your book. How else can I support? And then she's like, okay, can you come on a live stream on a Saturday afternoon? And I was like, Saturdays, we always go out to brunch and we go paint at this little cafe. I am so sorry. If I say yes to this, I'm going to be dreading it all day long and it's not going to be good for either of us. And so then I ended up pre-recording a video and sending it to her to use for her book launch event on a Saturday. And at the end of the day, she said, you're doing the right thing. Like, you will never get this time back with your kids. And it was just one of those experiences where it's like, my heart broke of like, I don't want her to think I'm not supporting her. I love her and I'm so excited for her, but this is just out of alignment with what I've committed to. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that feels deep.
Yeah. What is your biggest struggle when it comes to setting boundaries? Like, where do you feel like you overcommit too much?
I feel like I mean, honestly, everywhere. I feel like I overcommit everywhere. I overcommit to my work and I think that I have more time in the day than I do. I overcommit to my kids, and they always say it was pretty hurtful when I had to explain, they would say, oh, you lied. You said we were going to do this. And I was like, well, I didn't lie, but I overcommitted. My plans changed. Right. And so now it's been kind of a funny thing in our house. Like, oh, I guess plans changed again, and so it's like, it hurts pretty deep. So I'm like, okay, like I'm overcommitting to them, but I want them to be the last people that I overcommit to. Does that make sense? And so, so, and with 5 of them, it's hard. And not asking for parenting advice here.
Imagine. I have 0 parenting advice. You are doing so much more than I am. And like, that is, I mean, when you really think of the logistics of 5 children, my mind is literally blown. So I totally understand that. And I think too, when it comes to things like that and with boundaries, I even had a moment the other day. Coco's school was canceled because it's so cold here in Minnesota. And I was trying to get work done and I was half in on work, half in with her. And she had this moment of like, you're not even looking at me. And I was like, oh my God. And I like shut my computer, set my phone down. And I was like, you are so right. I wasn't paying attention to you. I am so sorry. What were you trying to tell me? And I feel like so much of the guilt creeps in when we're half in on everything, right? And so part of the boundaries, I think, is doing your best. And again, this is meant to be flexible because we're parents and parenting requires a lot of flexibility, but doing your best to create space and time where you can be all in on your work and you're not thinking about parenting, and all in on your parenting and you're not thinking about work. And I think that whole mom guilt idea sneaks in when we're half in on everything and we feel like we're not actually accomplishing anything. And so it's like, how can you create boundaries that give you a little bit more of that focus time? Because we know we can get a crap ton done, whether it's during nap time or quiet time or whatever that is. And so figuring out like, what does that look like? It can be so hard though. So hard.
Yeah. Yeah. That, like what you said there, like I do it all and I do almost like a mediocre job at everything.
Yes.
When I do need to like shift that to do one thing at a time, fully all in. So no, that's a good shift.
I love that. Okay. Give me your next question.
Okay, so my next question is, so with my cycle syncing, I know that I have something unique to share about cycle syncing for entrepreneurial women and moms, but stepping into the role of thought leader feels intimidating at times, mostly because I am quite an introvert at heart. And so the other thing is with social media at play, it's such a huge one. And being an introvert, I don't love being on social media. So my question is, what steps would you recommend for building the authority and confidence in such a niche space?
Yeah. So it's funny because it might feel niche, but I would argue that it is not niche at all in a beautiful way of like so many people can benefit from this.
Sure.
And so I think a lot of times too, we can trick ourselves into thinking like this is so hyper specific. But when you really open it up for people who menstruate, they can benefit from this, right? And so that's a very good chunk of our population. And so I agree. I think sometimes people get surprised, but I am extremely introverted. And so I actually don't love social media either. And it is like I have to push myself to show up on there. But I would say figure out ways that showing up doesn't feel super intimidating or that you can show up consistently. So one thing I've been doing that's been working really well for Instagram is posting those carousels that kind of tell a story. So as you scroll through each slide, the story continues to build. And so taking what used to be in a caption and putting it into a carousel where the story is growing with each slide, that's been a really easy, accessible way to get a point across and to make an impact through social without having to hold my phone up in front of my face and talk into my camera. And so sometimes I think it's just that we have to get a little bit more creative as to what can we commit to doing that isn't super, super intimidating for us. And then also how can we challenge ourselves a bit to step out of our comfort zone? And one thing that I think would be really interesting for you is that if you are feeling like an imposter or just kind of struggling with like stepping into that thought leader position, is as you're working with people, collect their stories and ask if you can share their stories and their experiences. Because one thing that I think helps bolster up our confidence is knowing that, hey, this doesn't just work for me, it can also work for other people. And testimonials are basically like having people be walking billboards for us and an excuse for us to talk about our own work without using our own words to describe it. And so I think there are a lot of interesting ways. I think you could do some really interesting things inside of Canva and making graphics that help illustrate, the different areas of our cycle or the different ways you might be feeling. One of my friends who is a past guest on this show, her name is Erin Claire Jones, and she is big on human design. And one thing that she does really well with her social is she'll just call out a certain design type and then she'll give advice on it. And so you could even say like, you might be in your luteal phase if, and then have a bulleted list so that people could qualify themselves and be like, oh, I understand that a little bit better. And so I think that there are different ways that you can make social media accessible. I think there are different ways that you can make showing up a little bit easier. But the last piece would be is when you look at your business model, how big is speaking to the masses and how much does that mean to you versus working and going deeper with certain people? And so I think a lot of times we look at social and we're like, I've got to reach everybody. I've got to go really big and cast a wide net. But in reality, a lot of our businesses can run with a certain amount of clients. Like I had a huge realization when I was a wedding photographer of like, I don't need every single engaged couple in the state of Wisconsin to want to choose me. I literally need 20 people to work with. And that just really shifted, one, how I showed up online and how I spoke, but two, how I was able to go deeper with those people versus trying to go super wide on the internet.
Yeah, that's good. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So I think I am kind of like on that, border of like, do I want to go? Am I trying to be this big thing or yeah, do I need to just step back and go deeper?
Yeah. And I think too, that will reveal itself to you as you start doing more of this specific work. Like I think a lot of times we try to scale too fast. And I think that's where the message can get really diluted or we can get really overwhelmed. And so it's like, if you can start and make an impact and see the changes in 5 clients and get those stories and start talking about it, like that's how the movement really begins. And I think a lot of times people look at maybe people like me who is able to now serve the masses, and you forget, like, I was doing one-on-one coaching in my little condo, sitting at a Target table, teaching photographers how to do what to do. And so it's just like, I think a lot of times we think almost too big, and it's at a detriment to like the impact that we can actually make and the ways that we can test out like what our offer is, how it actually works, how it makes sense for people, and the results it can give them.
Yeah, that's good. That makes sense.
I love it.
One of the most rewarding parts of running a business is taking care of your team, but it can also be one of the hardest. That's why my team and I switched to Gusto, the all-in-one platform that takes the pain out of payroll, benefits, and HR. Whether it's W-2s, 1099s, or small group health insurance, Gusto has you covered. And with their offer letters and checklists, your new hires will feel welcome from day one. Businesses that switch to Gusto save on average $2,600 a year and 48 hours of time. Their software is easy to use and accessible online from anywhere. Payroll is fast and easy too. Gusto automatically files and pays all federal, state, and local taxes, so you don't have to stress about paperwork. And if you ever have a tough HR question, Gusto has certified experts ready to help. If you've been waiting for a tool to simplify your business and make life easier, this is it. Right now, you get 3 months for free when you run your first payroll. Head to gusto.com/goaldigger to get started. That's gusto.com/goaldigger. It's 2025 and the B2B marketing world is noisier than ever. If your strategy this year doesn't include better ad targeting, your message could get lost in the shuffle. That's where LinkedIn ads come in. With LinkedIn's precise targeting, you can reach professionals by job title, industry, company, and more. You'll have direct access to and build relationships with key decision makers. I'm talking about 1 billion members, 130 million decision makers, and 10 million C-level execs. LinkedIn generated 2 to 5 times higher return on ad spend for the tech industry compared to other social platforms. No wonder 79% of B2B marketers say LinkedIn delivers the best results for paid media. So if you're ready to work with a partner who respects the B2B world you operate in, LinkedIn ads is the way to go. Start converting your B2B audience into high quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next campaign. Head to linkedin.com/goal to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/goal. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be to be.
Okay, what's your next question?
So it just goes right off of that. So I want to grow a business that not only supports my family and my well-being, but also inspires other women to reclaim their time and energy and be proud of themselves. So if you were in my shoes, what's one thing you would focus on right now to ensure that this business leaves a lasting impact?
Okay. So I think what is interesting about this, and actually, let me ask you a question first. So you're a VA, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And now you're introducing this. So tell me about the business model right now and maybe like what you're seeing in the next 6 months to a year.
For the cycle syncing?
Yes.
I have gone so back and forth with it. So I decided that I was just going to put a course out instead of going one-on-one right off the bat. So I've done like we'll say like mini little coaching sessions within like the clients that I have. And then I decided that I was going to just do a course, a widespread course, and sell it on repeat and maybe potentially do some sort of a coaching from them, like an upsell for one-on-one coaching. And so I'm going back and forth whether that's the right way, just like we had talked about. Now I'm like internally thinking about, I'm like, well, maybe this isn't the right way. Maybe I should just go deep on one-on-one coaching first and then try to just do like a general masses course. I don't know.
Well, I actually think there's benefits to both ways. So I don't think there's a right or a wrong way. And that actually gives me a lot of clarity because I think that when it comes to alignment and some of the things we've talked about in terms of boundaries and feeling spread thin and all those different things, a course can solve a lot of those problems, right? Because you've created that content once, you get to sell that content, and then that content is serving your clientele, which I think is the ultimate alignment with where you're at in your life and like what you actually need from this business. I would say it doesn't have to be an either or. I would argue that it should be like a both and, because I think what will be interesting is that if you go deeper with some of the one-on-one clients, or you did like a small group coaching or something like that, it might give you insights to make your course or your marketing even better or more clear. For me, what was interesting is like before I made my first course, I did one-on-one coaching for about 5 different photographers. And I started noticing trends, right? Like you notice like, oh my gosh, they're asking the same things, or they need help understanding this same concept, or they want to see these same templates. And it becomes very obvious. And something that is scientific, like cycle syncing, there is, your own take on it, but also there's a lot that's rooted in our experience and science. And so what's amazing about it is that I feel like if you do some of the more hands-on one-on-one, you'll get those transformation stories that are necessary for you to really understand and own the impact that you can make with this work, that I think will anchor you deeper to it and give you like that stronger why. But I also think it is highly in alignment that you've created a course that you can maybe go more volume with that and have not as heavy of a lift, especially at this stage of life. So I don't think, again, it's an either or. I think it's a both and. But when you're really thinking about like, okay, what is one thing to focus on right now? I would say get really clear as to like which route you want to go or what your bandwidth is if you do go deeper with those one-on-one clients, or if you promote the course, and kind of figure out like, what is this going to look like as this year unfolds? And I used to be the biggest hater on annual planning. Like I used to plan month by month because I couldn't even commit to quarter by quarter because I was just, my ADHD brain and all the ideas and things was like, what if something more exciting comes up? What if something is great? And one thing that I've realized, especially as a mom, is that like having more structure and more plans in my business gives me more time, freedom, and creativity in motherhood, which is the priority right now. I actually was researching when I was looking at your questions, but the American Psychological Association reports that individuals with strong boundaries experience 50% less burnout and higher life satisfaction. And seeing kind of how your questions were really rooted in boundaries and alignment and, priorities, I think that having some sort of clear plan is going to help you stay in alignment, follow through on those things, and then also be able to like check yourself if you feel like you're going too hard or too deep into something. So what I would challenge you to do is after this call, really sit down and you can just do a very loose map of what you want the rest of this year to look like. And what I would consider if I were in your shoes, and again, put this through the SAM filter so you can take it or leave it, is I would consider, setting aside maybe 1 quarter to do more of the one-on-one coaching just to get that experience, to really get those testimonials and to anchor into like why this is so impactful and what you can do in terms of transformation. And then I would set aside 1 quarter all devoted to launching your course. And we do 1 launch per quarter, because I feel like there's so much that goes into it, right? Sales pages and email copy and social media and graphics and all these different things. And so oftentimes a lot of people will leave a couple weeks for a launch, or maybe a month if they're being generous. But I would argue that it takes an entire quarter to execute a launch well. And so looking at the remainder of this year, I would kind of look and map out and give yourself a little bit of structure, just so that if you're someone who's prone to chase new ideas or get excited about something else, you have a plan that you can stick to and follow through with. And one thing that I do, and I told my team this at the beginning of the year, is I was like, I know that I'm prone to get excited or want to throw things in last minute. And I want you to challenge me if I do that. Like really say, are you sure that that's what you really want? Because here's what you said you wanted at the beginning of this year. And so I gave them full reign to challenge me if I ever get like super excited or try to throw something in or add chaos to our really well executed plan. And so you need to do that for yourself of like, am I sure that this matters? Am I sure that this is worth pursuing? Or am I just trying to distract myself or add unnecessary chaos, which entrepreneurs are amazing at. So how does that sound to you?
Yeah, no, hits the nail right on the head for sure.
Yeah. Why do we do that? I mean, it's interesting. I feel like I've been studying that lately of like, why do we like to like light a match and watch it burn? Like it is just fascinating to me, because even the people with like the best boundaries who like love letting things be easy can tend to overcomplicate things. So I think it's just the way we're wired, but also it can be a huge detriment to us, and it can create that stress and tension that a lot of us feel that often leads to burnout.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Okay. I think we have one more question, right?
Yeah. So this one is more about you. One thing that I teach my clients is how to sync their business tasks with their monthly cycles to work with their energy and not against it. So as someone who's intentional about energy management, do you have any rhythms or strategies that help you stay productive while honoring your natural ebbs and flows?
Yes. Okay. So I love this question. And this is challenging me to dive deeper into this again because every time I learn about this and the power of it, the more I'm like reminded of like, this should be in our practice. This should be in our business. We should be planning our launches around certain points of our cycle when we're most energized and outgoing. So this is a challenge. And it's so funny that we're having this conversation because I was literally recording a solo show yesterday talking about paying attention to your energy rhythms and not just on a day-to-day basis, which I think we're prone to do in a man's world, but also in terms of our monthly rhythms. So this is very front of mind for me. One thing that's been really interesting, and I was kind of reflecting on it the other day, is when Coco started school, she was doing half days. So it was from 8 to noon. And so I would just naturally stack my work from 8 to noon so that when she got home from school, I was available to her. Now she's in full day kindergarten, but I have kind of maintained that as like, that is my most energized window. And so what's interesting is that I will not do podcasts. I will not take calls after that like 1 o'clock hour each day. I just naturally find like that is when I need to decompress, or I'm better at doing like copy or review work or emails or that kind of stuff. And so I've really kind of stacked my days in terms of that morning window. And I also have really tried to cater to my energy in the morning. So even this morning, I wasn't feeling great. I was like, I'm still going to drink my protein shake. Like I need to get protein in. And so just paying attention to like, how do I support my body to have the right energy in the morning, especially when I need to be more outgoing. And I think for people like us that are introverts, you really have to like pump yourself up to show up in this way, right? And so, for me, doing that and then also having like blackout days, which I think would actually be amazing for you as well, is back to the boundary conversation. Last year, I kind of realized like my favorite days of work are days where I have nothing on my calendar. Not meaning that I don't do anything. I actually get the most work done when I don't have calls and I'm not constantly in Slack and different things like that. And so a few things that we've done is like Mondays, I do not take calls. I rarely take calls on Thursdays. Those are my days to like ease into the week and ease out of the week. And so blocking those off to protect those times fiercely. And then time blocking the days where I have calls. So yesterday I had a bunch of calls. They were all back to back to back. It's kind of exhausting, but I would rather have that and then have a totally free day than to constantly be popping in and out. And as somebody with ADHD, like if I have an appointment at 2 p.m., it ruins my entire day. Even if I have nothing for the entire morning. Yes, you too. Like it is like, I can't describe it. My husband does not understand it. But the other day I had an appointment at 2. It ruined my whole day. All I could think about was this damn meeting. I kept thinking about like, what am I going to get done before this meeting? Like it just derailed me entirely. And so is this relatable? Because I'm like, I don't know if people get it. But so making sure that like I set up my calendar in a way where I'm not wasting a day thinking about a 2 o'clock meeting and I'm actually getting things done. And so for me, it's like stacking the morning and then having free days and then stack days is super helpful for me. And just consistently checking in and reworking. And I think it's interesting because so many entrepreneurs get into this for freedom, right? And flexibility. And yet somehow we add in so much rigidity into our work where it feels like we can't be flexible, but in reality we can. And so constantly checking in and renegotiating like, okay, what is this stage of life offering that I might need to renegotiate what this looks like in terms of how my work hours are working or what this looks like. So I would just say, pay attention to those types of things. And then don't be afraid with your clients too, to say like, hey, Mondays I'm going to be doing this sort of work for you, but I'm not going to be available because I want to do deep work. And I think people respect that because they're like, ooh, deep work. Like that's good stuff. But we don't realize how distracted we get with things like texts and Slacks and emails and things coming in that we don't actually get to the deep work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
are you a 2
good.
p.m. appointment hater too?
Definitely. My husband doesn't get it either. And I'm like, well, he's like, what did you do today? And I'm like, I waited around to go to this appointment basically because there wasn't enough time to like start something.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we realize is like the starting of tasks and then like the ending of tasks are like so hard to do.
Yes. And I think too, like for so many of us, I think that there comes an identity with that of not being able to follow through where we don't even recognize it. But over time, we start to count ourselves as somebody who is not capable of following through because we've done it before in our past. I know for me, like on my health journey, it was so eye-opening to recognize that like I had so many identities that I had tied to myself when it came to being a healthy person. Like I just consider myself not healthy. I was the big girl. I was the friend. And it was just really interesting kind of unraveling a lot of that and recognizing that like there have been patterns in my life where I've struggled to follow through on certain things. And that really weighs on us, I think, more than we acknowledge or more than we even understand. And so for people like you and I who have all these ideas, who get excited about things, I think picking things that we are actually able to follow through on, even if the idea changes or we're not as excited for, there's something really powerful in seeing something to completion and becoming a person who completes something that carries us through for the next idea and the one after that. Does that resonate at all?
Yeah, that feels good. Yeah, picking the things that you know that you'll be able to follow through, at least at the beginning, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so that you are a person who does things from beginning to end. Yeah.
Yes. And it's like those little things. And I think too, it's like we get so excited about the really, really big ideas. Like we want our work to change the world and change people's lives from day one. And I think it absolutely can. But oftentimes it's getting started with like the stupid, simple things that kind of feel frivolous and silly to us. But again, we get that momentum from doing the reps. And when we see ourselves doing the reps and we see ourselves be people who follow through, that confidence carries us forward and makes us more consistent. And I think that is such an underrated thing about entrepreneurship. It's like doing the reps. Like, are you doing it every single day? Are you getting the things done that you say you're going to get done? And I think that just changes how we show up, which is really beautiful as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Amazing. Any final questions that have popped up through our conversation?
Yeah, I guess the only other thing, and I don't even know how to pose this as a question.
Yeah.
So just as you were as we were talking and you were saying, like your time with Coco and, like when she said that you weren't paying attention to her or whatever,
Yes.
like, and you were like, oh, yeah, you're right. I'm going to close this. And this is what my priority was right now. Like so my kids range from 4 to 14.
Yep.
And so as much as I would love them to be a priority right now, I am trying to build my business in the same time. And so part of me has wondered if I'm supposed to just be pushing off my business for a bit, right? And still living, because by the time my business is big enough to be kind of running in the background, my babies are going to be grown. Yeah. And so I think that's a big part of why I have a hard time, like with stretching myself so thin everywhere.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight?
No, I mean, I think I did a podcast episode years ago of like, should I shut it down or should I scale it? Of like, I think so many of us are battling that of like, what does this look like? And, having a 6-year-old now and like she's in kindergarten, I'm like, oh my God, it went by so fast. And it doesn't feel like it, right? Like I can't imagine having a teenager. But it is a literal blink. And it's like there's only such a small window that we are their favorite people, that we are the people that form their opinions, their beliefs, all of that. And so, it's interesting. I was recently talking to one of my team members and we were talking about goals for this year. And I said, instead of having all these number-oriented goals like we've had in the past, like I want this year to feel good and I want it to feel flexible and I want it, and it was just like a more feminine, energetic take on the year than like the masculine of like, we're going to push and we're going to get this and this is what we're going to achieve. And it was just really interesting to see that shift both in myself, but also in the business. And I guess my question for you then would be like, does it need to be this giant thing? Like, could it be a side hustle? Could it be a way that you have a greater purpose and you're doing important work, but it doesn't need to be this massive thing? And really maybe being introspective after this call of like, what does it need to be in order for me to think it's successful? And am I willing to do the work to get it to that point? And I just feel like all those dang memes and, the wooden signs that our moms have in their houses are so true of like the days are long, but the years are short. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like that is so true. And so it's something I grapple with all the time as well. And I think so many moms can resonate. And maybe that's a part of your message and your mission is like, why is this work important, especially if you're already stretched thin and you're trying to juggle things because you want to serve moms, right? So you're in it and you get it and they also get it. And so I would just really ask yourself, what does it need to be in order for it to be successful for you? And really kind of look at that. And I think too, it's like we often just see success in such a masculine way of those big numbers or those big launches or the number of clients. But I feel like if we bring more of the feminine energy, the ease and the flow in, your business could be incredibly successful if it allows you an outlet and an income that doesn't have to be massive, right? And so figuring out like what is in alignment with that version of success for you right now. And I feel like in my life, I have to look at this like on a year by year basis of like, am I ready to go hard or like, am I still hitting the brakes because I'm really focused on my kids? And I'm dealing with that where it's like my little one will start school in the fall. And so my days are limited. And so it's like, you know, what does that look like? And I think for moms, we have to really be constantly looking at like, what is my purpose in this stage of life right now? Not in my whole life, what do I hope to accomplish? But like right now, where am I best serving? And like, how do I show up the best for that piece? And that can be a hard and brutal and honest answer for a lot of us.
Yeah, that's good. What is my purpose right now? That's good.
Yeah. Right now. Oh, Sam, where can everybody find you, connect with you, learn more about you, check out your work? Give us all the places.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. My handle is at the.samantha.gaunt. And then my website is samanthagaunt.com. So you can find me there and work with me for any VA services or cycle syncing, anything like that.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being brave and coming on the podcast today. I hope this was fun for you. It was such a treat. I love doing these coaching sessions, so I really, really respect you coming on the show.
Yeah, this was incredible. Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you love these coaching sessions as much as I do. It is such a joy to connect with Goal Digger podcast listeners just like Sam. And I absolutely just love meeting you where you're at in your business and hopefully shedding light and answering some of the bigger questions that you might be grappling with in the dark of the night. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you are not yet a member of our Goal Digger Podcast Insiders Facebook community, make sure you dive in there. That is where we are doing our calls to connect with listeners just like you for these coaching sessions. And I would love to coach you next on the podcast. So make sure you're a member of that community so you don't miss our next call for next month's coaching session. It would be an honor to talk to you, to help you, and to come alongside of you in the journey that we're in. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Goal Digger Podcast. If you know someone who could benefit from this show, please share this episode with them. I think there are so many amazing nuggets and wisdom and things that so many of us face often in isolation. And of course, until next time, keep on digging your biggest goals. Thanks for pulling up a seat for another episode of the Goal Digger Podcast. I hope today's episode fueled you with inspiration, gave you information that you can turn into action, and realigned you with your true north in life and business. If you've enjoyed today's episode, head on over to goaldiggerpodcast.com for today's show notes, discount codes for our sponsors, freebies to fuel your results, and so much more. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed so that you never miss a future show. We'll see you next time, Goal Diggers. Much more. And if you haven't yet, make sure you're subscribed so that you never miss a future show. We'll see you next time, Goal Diggers.